What if everything you've been told about being too much was a lie? What if your intensity, your sensitivity, your relentless questioning, what if these aren't flaws, but the very blueprint of an evolved mind? Carl Jung, the legendary psychiatrist, uncovered something extraordinary. Less than 5% of humanity ever develops what he called differentiated consciousness. These aren't just different people. They're the psychological elite, operating on a frequency most can't even perceive. Here's the tragic irony. These rare individuals often spend their entire lives convinced something is fundamentally wrong with them. Society teaches them to suppress their depth, to dim their light, to apologize for their fierce intellect. Jung's research showed countless cases of people with profound psychological architecture who were shamed into believing their exceptional mental sophistication was a burden, not a gift. This isn't just a difference, it's an evolutionary leap. Jung understood something modern psychology still struggles to grasp. The traits that make you feel like an outsider aren't defects, they're upgrades. You're not broken, you're a breakthrough. As Jung himself wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what if who you truly are doesn't fit into society's narrow, convenient definitions of normal? Think about it from an evolutionary lens. Who pushed humanity forward? Not the conformists. It was always the relentless questioners, the deep feelers, the ones who saw possibilities others couldn't even dream of. They were the ones who couldn't stomach the status quo, whose inner compass pointed to something far grander than ordinary existence. You've probably been told you're too sensitive, too intense, or too complicated. But Jung identified these supposed flaws as psychological differentiation, the rare capacity to perceive and process reality at levels most people simply never develop. Modern neuroscience is catching up, with research on highly sensitive people showing deeper sensory processing. But Jung saw beyond that. Individuals whose entire psychological structure operates on an advanced plane. The most profound part, these extraordinary individuals often hide their gifts. They've been conditioned to see their unique wiring as a burden, not a superpower. You've learned to dim your light, not because it's too bright, but because others find its brilliance threatening. But what if it's time to stop hiding? What if it's time to fully own what makes you undeniably, profoundly rare? Join me as we descend into the depths of Jungian psychology to uncover these 8 definitive signs of a truly rare personality type. Even half of these resonate. Get ready for a radical paradigm shift, because you're not too much for the world. The truth is, the world is too little for you. Let's unlock the secrets of your advanced psychological architecture. Sign 1. You experience emotional depth that feels almost supernatural. Jung discovered that certain individuals don't just feel emotions. They experience what he called affect-toned complexes, creating a profound psychological resonance. You don't just have feelings. Feelings move through you like symphonies, each carrying layers of meaning that others simply can't access. This isn't instability, it's emotional sophistication. When you feel deeply, you're not overreacting. You're tapping into what Jung called the objective psyche, layers of human experience most people have learned to suppress. You feel the unspoken tension in a room before anyone says a word. You carry the emotional undercurrents of every interaction, because your psyche is wired for depth, not surface-level pleasantries. As Jung put it, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. For you, everything illuminates pathways to understanding that others can't even perceive. Sign 2. You question reality with what I call sacred curiosity. Most people live what Jung termed unconscious lives, accepting social programming without examination. But you can't help but dig deeper. Jung would recognize your active thinking function, a relentless refusal to accept surface explanations. You don't just ask what, you demand why. Why do people stay in relationships that diminish them? Why do we accept systems that don't serve human flourishing? Why do we pretend shallow conversations constitute meaningful connection? Jung called this the transcendent function, the psychological ability to see beyond current limitations. While others accept the status quo, you're already envisioning what could be different, more authentic, more aligned with human potential. But here's the kicker. Your questions threaten others' comfortable illusions. When you ask deep questions, you're not just seeking answers. You're challenging the psychological defenses that keep people safe in their limitations. If you've ever been told you ask too many questions or think too deeply, comment below. My curiosity is sacred. Let the world know. Sign 3. You've developed what I call conscious independence. Jung famously said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. You've learned to do exactly this, often not by choice, but by raw psychological necessity. According to Jung's research, rare personalities forge individuated consciousness earlier than others, usually forged in the fires of adversity. Your independence isn't a defensive mechanism, it's an achievement. You've learned through lived experience that depending on others for your sense of worth is psychological quicksand. So you built yourself from the ground up, often alone. You created an identity that couldn't be taken away by someone else's opinion or their sudden absence. Jung called this individuation, the psychological journey toward becoming whole. Most people never complete it because it requires facing what Jung termed the shadow, all the parts of yourself you've been taught to reject. For you, solitude isn't loneliness, it's a sanctuary. It's where you remember who you are, beneath all the roles and expectations. This self-knowledge, Jung believed, is the bedrock of all true psychological health. Sign 4. You possess what I call hyperperceptive awareness. Jung revolutionized psychology by identifying intuition as a legitimate psychological function. He described it as perception via the unconscious that brings forth ideas, images, possibilities, ways out of a blocked situation by a process that is mostly unconscious. You don't just observe people, you read their psychological signatures. You notice micro-expressions, energy shifts, the words they don't say. Jung would have recognized this as active imagination, the ability to perceive beyond the obvious. When someone says they're fine, but their entire energetic field screams distress, you can't unsee it. When there's tension in a room that everyone else seems to ignore, you feel it in your bones. This isn't paranoia. It's psychological sensitivity operating at a level most people never develop. But here's Jung's vital warning. If you don't learn to protect this sensitivity, it will exhaust you. You end up becoming an unconscious therapist for everyone around you, regulating conversations, carrying pain that isn't yours to carry. Your gifts become a drain, if not consciously managed. Sign 5. You crave meaning over everything else. Jung observed, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what if being true to yourself means rejecting everything society tells you to want? Jung discovered that certain personalities are psychologically incapable of living inauthentic lives. You don't choose meaning over popularity. Your psyche demands it. You've probably tried living for external validation, following the scripts, playing expected roles. But Jung would have instantly recognized the symptoms, that gnawing emptiness, that sense of betraying something essential, that quiet desperation beneath any applause. When you live against your psychological type, you don't just feel uncomfortable, you develop what Jung called neurotic symptoms. Your psyche literally rebels against inauthenticity. You can't pretend shallow goals matter. You can't get excited about achievements that lack substance. You can't build relationships based on convenience rather than genuine connection. Your psychological makeup won't allow it. But here's the remarkable upside. People who prioritize meaning become what I call evolutionary catalysts for human consciousness. When you refuse to settle for less than authentic connection, you implicitly force others to confront their own inauthenticity. Sign 6. You've outgrown people and environments repeatedly. Jung said, the greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents. But what happens when you refuse to live an unlived life? Jung understood that psychological growth is often a solitary journey, demanding a continuous shedding of outdated selves. You've likely experienced the painful realization that people who once knew you don't anymore. Not because you've become difficult, but because you've shed layers of conditioning that no longer serve your true self. Jung called this process psychological death and rebirth. The friends who knew you when you were shrinking, people-pleasing, or suppressing your truth, they remember that version of you. And sometimes they desperately want that version back. But you can't go back. Jung understood that psychological evolution is irreversible. Once you've truly seen behind the curtain of social conditioning, you can't return to unconscious conformity. If people seem uncomfortable with your growth and keep asking you to be who you used to be, remember this: your evolution is not negotiable. Comment that below if it resonates. My evolution is not negotiable. Sign 7. You create what I call transformational presence. Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But what if you're the type of person who creates transformation simply by showing up authentically? Jung identified a rare quality: the ability to create psychological holding space. When someone speaks to you, they feel truly seen in a way that's uncommon. You don't just listen to words, you perceive underlying emotional states. You don't offer quick fixes, you offer deep witnessing. You don't rush to judgment, you create space for truth to emerge. This level of presence, Jung understood, is a profound form of psychological healing. But here's what I've observed about people with this gift: they often exhaust themselves by giving it too freely. You become so skilled at holding space for others that you forget to ask for space to be held for yourself. Jung discovered that highly empathetic personalities often develop what I call helper syndrome, a pattern of unconscious self-sacrifice that, ironically, serves no one in the long run. The work isn't to stop caring, it's to learn discernment. Sign 8. You sense a purpose that can't be defined yet. Jung said, your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. If you feel a persistent, restless sense that you're meant for something more than the ordinary, Jung would recognize this as the transcendent function, or psyche's drive toward individuation and a unique, unfolding purpose. You feel it, that undeniable knowing that you have something profound to contribute, something to build, something unique to express. It might not be clear yet, but it's undeniably there. Jung understood this as creative potential seeking expression, not for fame, but for alignment. It's the psychological necessity of living in harmony with your deepest, most authentic nature. Jung found that people who ignore this calling often develop neurotic symptoms, anxiety, depression, a deep sense of meaninglessness. But here's his most profound insight about purpose-driven personalities. Your calling isn't just personal, it's transpersonal. You're not just here to fulfill yourself, you're here to serve the evolution of consciousness itself. You are a crucial piece of humanity's unfolding destiny. Jung spent his entire career studying personalities like yours. He called people with these traits what I term the differentiated individuals. Those who have developed a psychological complexity that allows them to see, feel, and understand at levels most people never reach. But Jung also identified stages of development for rare personalities. Understanding where you are in this process is critical for your continued growth. Stage 1. The unconscious outsider. You feel profoundly different, but you have no idea why. You experience these intense traits, but you've been taught to see them as problems to be fixed, not gifts to be developed. You desperately try to conform, to fit in, to be normal. But the psychological strain is immense. Jung observed that people in this stage often develop persona rigidity, becoming so focused on appearing normal that they lose touch with their authentic selves. It's a suffocating existence. Stage 2. The awakening individual. This is where things shift. You begin to recognize your traits as potentially valuable, rather than problematic. You start to grasp Jung's concept of psychological types and see where you truly belong. You embark on shadow integration, owning the parts of yourself you've been taught to reject, the parts society deems unacceptable. This is where you stop apologizing for your depth and start owning it. You begin setting fierce boundaries with anyone who tries to dim your light, and you start actively seeking out others who can match your level of authenticity. This is your rebellion. Stage 3. Individuated consciousness. You've fully integrated your rare traits into a coherent, powerful identity. You understand your purpose, and you live it consciously. You've achieved psychological wholeness, the ability to be authentically yourself while remaining deeply connected to humanity. At this stage, you become what I call a beacon for other rare souls. You don't just live authentically. You give others explicit permission to do the same. You become a catalyst for collective consciousness evolution, a living example of courage. If you're ready to stop hiding your rare traits and start owning them completely, comment below. I am psychologically rare and proud. It's time to declare your truth. But Jung warned about something crucial that most people with rare personalities never learn. You must integrate your shadow, or your gifts will become your prison. What do I mean by this? Even psychologically advanced individuals have unconscious aspects that can sabotage their growth, turning their strengths into weaknesses. Jung identified several shadow patterns common to psychologically rare individuals. First, the superiority complex. Your shadow tells you your rarity means you're better than others, rather than simply different. This leads to isolation, arrogance, and a hollow sense of self. Second, the messianic shadow. You become convinced it's your job to wake up or heal everyone around you. This leads to burnout and resentment when others don't appreciate your unsolicited efforts. Third, the martyrdom shadow. You begin to believe that being rare means being destined to suffer, that your depth requires the sacrifice of your own happiness or authentic connection. These are the traps. Jung understood that shadow integration is non-negotiable for psychological health. The goal isn't to eliminate these tendencies, but to make them conscious so they don't unconsciously control your behavior. True psychological rarity includes the wisdom to know when to share your gifts and when to preserve them, when to lead and when to follow, when to speak truth and when to remain silent. It's about strategic self-stewardship. Jung also made a profound observation about rare personalities in relationships. They either attract people who want to possess their light or people who are threatened by it. Understanding this pattern is crucial for building truly authentic connections. Let's call them the light seekers, the light dimmers, and the rare, precious light matchers. The light seekers are unconsciously drawn to your energy, but they haven't done their own inner work. They want you to be their therapist, their guru, their source of meaning. They love your gifts, but not necessarily you as a complete, autonomous person. They want to consume your light. The light dimmers are threatened by your intensity. They constantly try to get you to tone down, be more reasonable, or stop making everything so complicated. They're often unconsciously triggered by your authenticity because it highlights their own inauthenticity. They want you to shrink to make them feel comfortable. Then there are the light matchers. These are the rare individuals who have done their own psychological work. They can meet you at your level of depth without needing to consume or diminish you. They celebrate your rarity while maintaining their own psychological sovereignty. They are your allies, your tribe. Jung discovered something beautiful about rare personalities who learn to navigate relationships consciously. They become mirrors that help others see their own potential for psychological development. The key is what Jung called psychological discrimination, the ability to discern who is capable of authentic relationship and who is simply seeking something else from you. But here's what Jung understood that changes everything. With psychological rarity comes profound responsibility. You're not just different for your own benefit. You're different in service of human evolution. Jung believed that individuals with rare personalities serve as bridges between the unconscious and conscious realms of human experience. Through your depth, your relentless questions, your refusal to accept shallow answers, you help humanity grow. This is precisely why you can't settle for ordinary. This is why surface-level connections feel empty. This is why you'd rather be alone than pretend. Your psyche knows you have work to do, and that work requires authenticity, depth, and unwavering courage. Your existence itself is a testament to what humanity can become. But Jung also warned about what I call psychological inflation, the danger of believing that being rare makes you superior rather than simply responsible. The key is holding both humility and power, understanding that you are special without ever believing others are less valuable. Your sensitivity isn't a weakness to be managed, it's intelligence to be applied. Your intensity isn't too much, it's exactly what certain situations require. Your refusal to settle isn't difficult, it's necessary for the evolution of consciousness. Jung made a startling prediction. As humanity evolves, more people will develop these traits. What's rare now will become more common as our species grows in psychological sophistication. This means you're not just personally rare. You're evolutionarily important. You represent what Jung called the leading edge of human consciousness, pioneering ways of being that others will eventually follow. You are the trailblazer. This perspective changes everything about how you see your struggles. Every time you felt like an outsider, you were actually scouting new territory for human potential. Every time you've been criticized for being too much, you were demonstrating possibilities that threaten limited worldviews. Every time you've chosen authenticity over acceptance, you've expanded what's possible for human connection. Every time you've refused to settle for shallow meaning, you've raised the bar for what life can truly become. Jung understood that psychological evolution happens through individuals like you, who simply refuse to accept current limitations as permanent. You're not just living your life, you're expanding what it means to be human. Yes, this path can come with loneliness. You're often walking uncharted territory, solving problems most people don't even recognize, seeking connections others don't believe are possible. Jung's final insight about rare personalities was both challenging and profoundly liberating. You must learn to love your rarity without needing others to understand it. The goal isn't to make everyone see how special you are. The goal is to embody your gifts so fully that you become a living example of what's possible when someone embraces their authentic nature completely. This means accepting that some people will never understand your depth. Some will be threatened by your questions. Some will want to diminish your light because it makes them uncomfortable with their own dimness. But Jung discovered something beautiful about people who fully embrace their psychological rarity. They become magnets for others who are also ready to embrace their own uniqueness. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need to find a few who can truly match your level of consciousness and build a life with them. The world desperately needs your questions, your sensitivity, your refusal to accept limitations as permanent. But you must give these gifts consciously, strategically, sustainably. You must learn to be both powerful and protective, both open and discerning. Remember what Jung identified about extremely rare personalities. These 8 signs aren't just individual traits. They're evidence of your advanced psychological architecture. Your emotional depth isn't oversensitivity. It's emotional intelligence operating at advanced levels. Your constant questioning isn't negativity. It's consciousness refusing to accept limitations. Your independence isn't isolation. It's psychological sovereignty. Your hyper-perceptive awareness isn't paranoia. It's intuition functioning as intended. Your craving for meaning isn't impractical. It's your soul demanding alignment. Your pattern of outgrowing people isn't coldness. It's evolution in action. Your transformational presence isn't manipulation. It's authenticity creating space for truth. Your undefined purpose isn't confusion. It's potential seeking expression. Even half of these signs resonated with you. Understand this. You're not just different. You're part of what Jung believed was humanity's next evolutionary step. You are one of the people pushing our species toward greater awareness, deeper truth, and more authentic connection. Yes, it's lonely sometimes. Yes, it requires more courage than most people will ever need. But Jung believed that people like you are absolutely essential for humanity's psychological evolution. Your intensity isn't too much. It's exactly what the world needs to shake off its comfortable numbness. Your sensitivity isn't weakness. It's a strength that can perceive what others miss. Your refusal to settle isn't difficult. It's necessary for progress. Carl Jung spent his life studying people like you because he understood something profound. You're not just living your own life. You're expanding what it means to be human. The world doesn't need you to be smaller, quieter, or more convenient. The world needs you to be exactly what you are, psychologically rare, and fiercely proud of it. If you are ready to fully embrace your psychological rarity and stop apologizing for the traits that make you extraordinary, comment below. I am evolutionary consciousness in human form. Share this video with someone who needs to remember their own psychological rarity. And if you want to understand more about Jung's insights into the shadow side of sensitivity, check out my video on Final Warning to Empaths. They're feeding on your light, where I reveal Jung's most disturbing discovery about how unconscious people drain the energy of psychologically advanced individuals. Subscribe now, because we're just beginning to explore the depths of what makes you extraordinary. Remember, you're not too much. The world is too little. And Jung knew that people like you are the ones who change that. Thank you for watching. See you in the next dimension.